I'm Graham Burrows from JCB, and I'm here to present the Elsternwick Place Precinct. And the site for this project sits on the southern edge of the Elsternwick Structure Plan and Activity Centre. And if we zoom in just a little bit, you can see it's quite an interesting site with a range of diverse interfaces. A park and railway line to the west, a car park to the east, the Glen Hutley Road strip shopping precinct immediately to the north, but then a strong suburban, single-storey suburban interface to the south. So lots going on. The next layer to this project that was interesting is that it was really one that evolved over time. We started working on Elsternwick Place in 2012, 11 years ago. It was a two-storey office building. But over time, an opportunity arose for the client to acquire the property to the north. So in 2014, we did further feasibility studies. But along leases meant that we couldn't amalgamate them into a single project. And so there was a conscious decision to turn them into two projects. And we can see here in this axonometric the diversity of the interfaces that we're having to encounter. As I mentioned, there is an activity plan over the precinct, and you can see Glen Hutley Road is starting to evolve, and there's a range of densification and consolidation happening along there. But if you look at the top right-hand slides, there's a strong urban contextual character. It was really important to us that the design response started to reflect that contextual character and give back to the suburbs. On the left-hand side, bottom left, you can see the parkland, and on the right-hand side is an image of the two-storey office blocks that sat on Riddle Parade before commencement. It was a very closed, insular building which really had no interaction with the street. So what was the strategy for the two sites? Well, firstly, to extrude up the podium street wall to connect with the street walls of Glen Hutley Road and beyond, and then extrude setback upper levels to the heights of the DDO beyond that. The interfaces really then started to sculpt and inform the sculpting of the building, and we sort of folded roofs to avoid overshadowing residences to the south. And importantly, we couldn't overshadow a park and a playground on the western side. So the constraints really started to give rise to the form making. And then finally, there was a layer of materiality and detail and application given to the buildings, which hopefully started to resonate with the context and the suburbs. Really the key to unlocking these two sites started in the basement, and we worked out the car park for stage one, and then we realised that by punching through, we could connect to a car park for stage two. Stage two was a small, narrow site, and if we actually put ramping in stage two, it would never have been viable. So utilising stage one, the stage one car park was the way to actually unlock the second site. Ground floor, both developments have got lobbies fronting onto Riddle Parade and a range of commercial retail tenancies also fronting onto Riddle Parade and Stanley Street. So really activating a precinct that was closed and insular in the first instance. Coming up to the podium levels, the typical format was office tenancies on the eastern side and a veneer of apartments looking across to the west in Elsternwick Place. But this is where time also came into play, because over the shift of time and the 9 years that this project took to happen, the market shifted, and whereas we were looking at downsize investor product and small price point driven owner-occupier product in stage one, there was a shift towards larger downsizing owner-occupier product at stage two. So and this is probably quite evident when we start to look at the upper floor plans. So smaller, more conventional apartments on stage one, and larger, more generous, almost homes in the sky, for stage two. And the one of the advantages of this site is this corner aspect and dual aspect to a lot of the apartments as well. So they sit together, distinct, individual, but compatible. They're friends, and much like the shops juxtaposed on Glen Hutley Road, there's a similarity but difference that evolves, and identity was important. And you could see the identity for stage one, Elsternwick Place, was really about resonating more directly with the residences and the street walls of Glen Hutley Road and the materiality and the sculpting of forms. Whereas stage two started to also play and pick up on the landscape narrative of the parkland across the way. Both metal clad, both brick podiums, similarities but differences continue. From a sustainability point of view, there were a lot of passive systems that were employed in the building from the outset. Deep reveals to our northern windows, shading and screening to our western balconies. I mentioned the corner aspects before, so there were a lot of cross-flow ventilation opportunities, probably more so than a conventional project. Solar generation on the roofs, and also rainwater tank reuse and reuse in gardens and toilet flushing. But I think the thing that's most interesting here is the typological diversity. And so we've got an active ground plane with retail and retail tenancies, providing life at street level. Commercial tenancies in Elsternwick Place, and then those smaller owner-occupier, and when I say small, they're not small, they're just conventional 80 square metre, 2-bedroom type apartments in Elsternwick Place. Whereas there was that shift to those larger owner-occupier units on Park Lane, and even 2-storey loft style, looks like terrace houses in the sky. So we've got a population of circa 80 or so different dwellings on this building, offices and retail tenancies. So almost like a microcosm of the neighbourhood beyond, but put together in this place. We can see from a plan form the smaller plans in stage 1 versus the slightly larger 90 to 120 square metre 2-bedders in stage 2. And so there was a shift in product. Is that 2 minutes to go? Oh dear. And we can see how that really manifests in the actual articulation and the language of the buildings. Same sorts of level of accommodation, those study nooks, the things that we need and we want, but different materials, different approaches, different bathrooms, a range of different materials, and even balconies a little bit more informal and analog in stage 1, and curated gardens in stage 2. Construction of stage 1 and stage 1 as a finished object, which was there for 5 years before we commenced stage 2, but a continuous commitment to detailing and craft despite the lower price pointing. Lobbies, office floor plates, and then upper level apartments with views onto the bay and screening, screens. Stage 2, and you can see the basement where we were going to start punching through for the car parking, and then onto the completed 2 projects. And they really stand together as their own mini precinct. This is looking from the railway line and from the west, from Parkland, but it's very visible from Glen Huntly Road because of the heritage buildings, the lower profile when viewed from Riddle Parade, and we've got a very visible and active abstract northern frontage and facade, which contributes, I suppose, dynamically to the experience from Glen Huntly Road. The eastern corner really shows how they are starting to engage with the forms and the typologies of the housing to the south and the east, and then a view up to the polished concrete abstract facade to the north, and just moments of detail and craft. This really shows the sculpting of the forms and how they really were informed by shade and shadow, creating sort of unconventional corners and junctions. And then coming inside stage 2, the shifting materiality, the colour scheme, again connecting with the park and the views beyond. Larger living spaces, more crafted detailing in the bathrooms, front doors, balconies, etc. You come out again and the materiality really glows and glistens in different lights, and there's quite an interesting evolving presence that the buildings give. And then coming back to ground level, you can see how this is a precinct that's experiencing the round, a small laneway to the north, and the planters are starting to really come to life on the stage 2 development, and a model for middle suburban development perhaps coming out of this, developer driven, active precincts, diverse populations, and contributory buildings are actually speaking to their contexts.